two neighbors, same street. Both have $40,000 sitting in savings. Neighbor A keeps his money at Chase, earns 0.01% interest. At the end of the year, the bank sends him $4 on $40,000. Neighbor B opened a different account, same FDIC insurance, same federal protections, same government guarantee. She earns 5.2%. At the end of the year, she collects $2,080. One of them made $4, the other made $2,080 on the exact same amount of money, with the exact same level of risk. The only difference is where the account is held and whether you know this exists. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time thinking about how the biggest banks in America are quietly paying their customers almost nothing on their savings while collecting billions in interest themselves. If your money is sitting in a traditional savings account right now, this video is going to cost you nothing and could make you thousands. Hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up if you're tired of your bank treating your savings like they're personal. Interest-free loan. Here's the thing. Most Americans believe a savings account is a savings account. You deposit money, the bank holds it, you earn a little interest. That's how it works. That's always how it's worked. Except that's not how it works. That's just how Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo need you to believe it works. Because the gap between what they earn on your money and what they pay you is one of the most profitable spreads in the entire financial system. Here's what actually happens when you deposit $40,000 into a Chase savings account, paying 0.01%. Chase takes that money and lends it out. They lend it as mortgages at 7%. They lend it as auto loans at 8%. They lend it as credit cards at 24%. They earn 7, 8, maybe 24 cents on every dollar you gave them. And they pay you back one single penny for every $100 every year. That's not a savings account. That's you funding the bank's lending operation for free. The spread between what the big banks earn on deposits and what they pay customers has never been wider. In 2023, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to the highest levels in 22 years. Banks immediately passed those higher rates to borrowers, mortgage rates jumped, car loan rates jumped, credit card rates jumped. But the big banks did not pass those higher rates to savers. Chase's standard savings account rate barely moved. Wells Fargo's barely moved. Bank of America's barely moved. A 2023 analysis by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that the top 5 banks by deposit volume paid an average savings rate of 0.08%, while the federal funds rate sat above 5%. They were pocketing the spread and calling it profit. And since most people never check their savings rate, never think to compare, never question whether there's something better, the banks got away with it. They still are. Let me take you back to 1933 for a second, because understanding what created this system is crucial to understanding how to escape it. Before the Great Depression, banks competed aggressively for deposits. They offered high interest rates to attract savers, in some cases, dangerously high rates. When the Depression hit and thousands of banks collapsed, Congress decided that interest rate competition between banks was destabilizing the system. So they passed the Banking Act of 1933, which included a provision called Regulation Q. Regulation Q made it illegal for banks to pay interest on checking accounts. It capped interest rates on savings accounts. For decades, big banks operated in a world where they literally could not compete on savings rates. The spread between what they earned and what they paid was government regulated. Then in 1980, the Depository Institutions Deregulation Act began phasing out Regulation Q. By 1986, rate caps were gone. Banks were legally free to pay savers whatever they wanted. Here's what happened next. Nothing. The big banks didn't raise their savings rates to compete because they didn't have to. The American consumer was already trained decades of conditioning to keep money at the local branch of their big bank. Switching felt complicated. Switching felt risky. The inertia was worth billions. But the deregulation that was supposed to help savers did create one opening. It allowed a new category of institution to emerge. Institutions with no branch networks, no physical infrastructure, no armies of tellers and ATM fleets to maintain that could pass their cost savings directly to depositors in the cellar, form of dramatically higher interest rates. That opening is exactly where the 10x savings account lives. Let me show you what the actual numbers look like, because this is where people stop believing me until they see it in black and white. The current national average savings account rate at traditional banks is 0.46%. That's the average. The big banks Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank are paying between 0.01% and 0.2% on standard savings accounts. That is not a typo. High-yield savings accounts at online banks and certain credit unions are currently paying between 4.5% and 5% annually. Some are even higher on promotional rates. Let's run the numbers on $40,000 over 5 years. Chase standard savings at 0.01%. After 5 years, you have $40,020. The bank made you $20 on $40,000 over 5 years. High-yield savings at 5%. After 5 years, you have $51,051. That's an extra $11,031 on the same deposit, with the same FDIC insurance, with the same federal protections, with the same ability to withdraw your money whenever you want. $20 versus $11,031. 5 years, same money, same risk. And here's where the compounding effect becomes genuinely life-changing. Let's say you're 35 years old and you have $40,000 in savings that you never touch. It just sits there. At Chase's 0.01%, by the time you're 65, you have $40,120. 30 years, $120 in interest. At a high-yield account, averaging 4.5% over the same 30 years, you have $148,451. The same $40,000 became $148,000 without a single additional deposit, without any investment risk, without anything except choosing the right type of account. The difference between those two outcomes, $108,000, is not the result of investing skill. It's not the result of market timing. It's not luck. It's the result of one decision, one account switch, made once. And here's what really gets me. The money that didn't grow, that $108,000 that evaporated into a 0.01% account, didn't disappear. It went to Chase's shareholders. Your savings funded their profit margin while you got almost nothing in return. So why doesn't everyone just switch? If the math is this obvious, if the difference is this dramatic, why are trillions of dollars still sitting in 0.1% savings accounts at big banks right now? 3 reasons. And the banks understand all 3 of them better than you do. The first is inertia. Your paycheck goes into your Chase account. Your bills auto-pay from your Chase account. Your debit card is a Chase card. Switching feels like a project. It feels like something you'll get to eventually. The bank has engineered maximum friction into the switching process, not because switching is actually difficult, but because making it feel difficult is worth billions of dollars in retained deposits annually. The second is the trust illusion. Big banks spend enormous amounts of money on brand recognition. The Chase logo is everywhere. The branch is on your street corner. Familiarity feels like safety. An online bank you've never heard of feels risky, even when it carries identical FDIC insurance and identical federal protections. The big bank is betting on psychology, not performance. The third is invisibility. When your savings account pays you $4 a year, there's no moment of visible loss. Nobody sends you a bill showing what you didn't earn. Your balance goes from $40,000 to $40,004, and it feels fine. The opportunity cost is completely invisible. You can only see what you're losing if you know what you're missing, and the bank has zero incentive to tell you. This is what economists call a rational ignorance trap. The cost of switching is real and immediate. It takes time and effort. The benefit of switching is delayed and abstract. You'll see it over months and years. Our brains are wired to overweight the immediate cost and underweight the long-term benefit. The banks understand this. They've built their entire deposit model on it. Let me go back to our 2 neighbors and show you specifically what Neighbor B did and how you can replicate it starting today, not next week, not after you finish this video and forget about it. Today, there are 3 categories of accounts currently paying 10 times or more than a standard bank savings rate. Each has slightly different characteristics, slightly different advantages, and slightly different ideal use cases. Understanding the differences is what separates someone who earns $4 a year from someone who earns $2,080. Category 1. High-yield online savings accounts. These are FDIC-insured savings accounts offered by banks that operate entirely online. no branches, no physical infrastructure, no armies of tellers, no fleets of ATMs to maintain, no real estate portfolio of corner locations in expensive cities. Their operating costs are a fraction of what Chase or Bank of America pays to keep the lights on, and those cost savings get passed directly to you in the form of dramatically higher interest rates. Current rates at the top institutions, 4.5% to 5.5% annually. Your money is fully accessible. You can withdraw anytime. There are no lockup periods, no penalties, no restrictions on transfers. The FDIC insures up to $250,000 per depositor, per institution, identical protection to your Chase account. The government doesn't care whether your bank has a branch on your street or exists entirely online. The insurance is the same. Names you should research right now: Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, SoFi, Discover Online Savings, American Express High Yield Savings, Synchrony Bank. These are not obscure startups. Goldman Sachs has been around since 1869, American Express since 1850. Ally Bank traces its roots to 1919. These are established, regulated, FDIC-insured institutions that simply made a different business decision about how to operate, and they're sharing the savings with you. One important note: rates change. The specific rates I'm quoting reflect current conditions. Always verify the current rate before opening any account. What doesn't change is that these institutions consistently, structurally, year after year, pay dramatically more than the big traditional banks because their cost structure allows it. Category 2. Treasury bills and Treasury money market funds. This is where the real 10x opportunity lives, especially for larger balances. And this is the one that surprises people the most because it's been hiding in plain sight for 250 years. U.S. Treasury bills are short-term debt instruments issued directly by the United States government. They come in 4-week, 8-week, 13-week, and 26-week maturities. You lend money to the U.S. government for a short period. They pay you back with interest. Currently, that interest runs between 5% and 5.5% annually, depending on the maturity. These are not investments in the traditional sense. There is no market risk. There is no credit risk. They are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States federal government, the same entity that can print the currency the debt is denominated in. They are, by every measure, the safest place to put money that exists on Earth. Safer than Chase, safer than any bank. Because banks can fail, the U.S. Treasury has never defaulted on a debt obligation in its entire history. You can buy Treasury bills directly through treasurydirect.gov with zero fees. Open an account, link your bank, buy bills in increments as small as $100. Or if you want instant liquidity without managing individual maturities, you can access them through Treasury money market funds at Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab. These funds hold exclusively short-term treasuries, currently yielding around 5% to 5.3%, with same-day liquidity. You can move money in and out as easily as a savings account. Here's the advantage nobody talks about. Treasury interest is exempt from state and local income taxes. If you live in California, where the top state income tax rate is 13.3%, or New York, or New Jersey, or any other high-tax state, that exemption is worth an additional 0.5% to 5% in effective yield compared to a savings account paying the same headline rate. A Treasury fund yielding 5.2% in California is effectively yielding close to 6% after accounting for the state tax you're not paying. That is a significant, compounding, structural advantage that most people completely ignore. Category 3. Credit Union High-Yield Accounts. Credit unions are member-owned financial cooperatives. They are not corporations. They do not have shareholders demanding quarterly profits. They do not have executives whose compensation is tied to maximizing the spread between deposit rates and lending rates. Every dollar of profit a credit union generates goes back to its members in the form of higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Many credit unions offer high-yield savings accounts and certificates of deposit at rates competitive with the best online banks, sometimes higher. A certificate of deposit at a well-run credit union can currently pay 5% to 5.5% on 12-month terms. Deposits are insured up to $250,000 by the National Credit Union Administration, the federal equivalent of FDIC insurance. The protection is identical. Membership requirements vary. Some credit unions serve specific employers or industries. Others are open to anyone who lives in a particular geographic area. Some are open to anyone who makes a small donation to an affiliated nonprofit. DepositAccounts.com and NerdWallet maintain updated lists of credit unions with the best rates and the most accessible membership requirements. Most Americans qualify for at least 2 or 3 without knowing it. Now, let me build the complete financial picture for our neighbor with $40,000 and show you exactly how to allocate across all 3 categories to maximize what you earn. The $40,000 high-yield allocation blueprint. First, bucket your emergency fund. 3 months of living expenses. For most households, that's somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. Let's use TOLV, null. This money needs to be immediately accessible. You cannot lock it up. You cannot put it in something with a maturity date. This goes into a high-yield online savings account at Ally, Marcus, or equivalent, earning 5%, accessible within 1 to 2 business days. Annual yield on this bucket, $600. Compare that to $1.20 at Chase. Second bucket, medium-term savings. Money you know you won't need for the next 6 to 12 months. Maybe it's a down payment you're building toward. Maybe it's a home repair fund. Maybe it's just money you want to keep accessible but don't need tomorrow. Let's say $18,000. This goes into 13-week or 26-week Treasury bills, either directly through Treasury Direct or through a Treasury money market fund at Fidelity or Vanguard, earning 5. 2%, 2, 5,4%, backed by the U.S. government, state tax exempt. Annual yield on this bucket, approximately $954. Compare that to $1.80 at Chase. Third bucket, long-term cash reserve. Money you genuinely won't touch for 12 months or longer. Emergency of emergencies money. Let's say the remaining $10,000. This goes into a 1-year certificate of deposit at a high-yield credit union or online bank, or into a 6-month Treasury bill ladder, where you're rolling maturities every 6 months to capture the highest available rate, earning 5% to 5.5%. Annual yield on this bucket, $500 to $550. Compare that to $1 at Chase. Total yield on the full $40,000 using this 3-bucket allocation, approximately $2,054 to $2,100 per year. At Chase, $4. The switch, opening the accounts, linking your existing bank, and transferring the money takes about 2 hours across a single afternoon. You do it once, and then every year, without lifting another finger, you collect an extra $2,050 that used to go directly into Chase's profit margin. And here's the number that should make you physically uncomfortable. If you're 35 years old and you make this switch today and never add another dollar to this $40, 000. Just let it sit in the right accounts. At 5% average yield for 30 years, you'll have $173,000 at age 65. If you leave it at Chase at 0.01% for the same 30 years, you'll have $40,120. The difference is $133,000. $133,000 earned by spending 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon choosing a different account. That is the most valuable 2 hours you will ever spend. Let me address every objection I know is forming in your head right now, because these are the exact objections that have kept millions of dollars in Chase's pocket. Bobby, is my money actually safe in an online bank? These aren't real banks. They are real banks. Legally, operationally, regulatorily, they are banks. The difference is they operate without physical branches, not without regulatory oversight. Marcus by Goldman Sachs is a product of Goldman Sachs, one of the oldest and most systematically important financial institutions in the United States. Ally Bank is a federally chartered bank that has been in operation in various forms since 1919 and currently holds over $180 billion in assets. Discover Bank has been FDIC insured for decades. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is a U.S. government agency created specifically to guarantee depositor funds. It insures up to $250,000 per depositor, per institution, per account category. It has existed since 1933. In its entire 90-year history, it has never once failed to make an insured depositor whole after a bank failure. Not once. 0 exceptions. The fact that your bank has a physical building on your street corner adds 0 additional protection to your deposits. 0. The FDIC protection is identical whether your bank is Chase Tower or a website. What about liquidity? What if I have an emergency and I need cash immediately? This is the objection that sounds reasonable but falls apart when you look at the actual mechanics. High-yield online savings accounts at Ally, Marcus, and equivalent institutions process transfers in 1 to 2 business days. If you have a true emergency that requires cash in the next 24 hours, you likely have a credit card as a bridge, which is exactly what credit cards exist for in emergencies. You charge the emergency, transfer from your high-yield account to cover it within 2 days, pay the card in full, no interest cost, no penalty, full access, for genuine same-day liquidity, meaning you want to be able to move money in the same business day. Treasury, money market funds at Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab offer exactly that. You can transfer from a Treasury money market fund to a linked bank account same day with a morning request. The liquidity is better than most people assume. And here's what nobody says out loud. The 1 to 2 day transfer window on a high-yield savings account is actually psychologically beneficial. It creates a small but real friction against impulsive withdrawals. Your emergency fund isn't supposed to be instant access cash for impulse purchases. It's supposed to be there when you genuinely need it. The slight delay enforces the discipline your emergency fund requires. That's a feature disguised as a limitation. Interest rates are going to come down. The Fed is cutting rates. Why switch now if rates are falling? Yes, rates will change. The Fed moves in cycles, and rates will eventually be lower than they are today. But this objection completely misunderstands the structure of the advantage. The gap between big bank savings rates and high-yield alternatives is not a recent phenomenon created by the current high-rate environment. It has existed through every rate cycle for the past 20 years.